Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. If you've watched this channel for more than 5 minutes, you know I hate Bubba guns. Sported firearms aren't that far behind, but I actually take a more nuanced view of them, even if I still strongly disapprove. Let me be clear. Sported firearms aren't bubba'd firearms. Whatever we may think of ruining a small piece of history, the work was generally done by professional gunsmiths or talented amateurs. We've all seen some nice work done on Milsurps to turn them into hunting rifles. Now, the heyday of sported firearms, done so usually for hunting, largely took place in the 1950s and 60s, and it's usually argued that there was a good economic argument for sporting a military surplus firearm. Your average M1903 Springfield, Lee Enfield, or Kar 98K could be had pretty cheap. I'm talking $30 and under. Think about what you were getting in exchange for that money. Generally, a very well-built firearm in a caliber where there was plenty of cheap ammunition. And if you're an ex-soldier, you might already be familiar with the manual of operations for that firearm. By comparison, a brand new hunting rifle could be several times the cost of a military surplus rifle, even when the cost for sporting it was factored in. Even in the 1960s, it wasn't uncommon to see a decent hunting rifle cost more than $300 at the time. Granted, most rifles were cheaper, but as always, you get what you paid for. All that leads me to something that I've always been curious about. How much did it actually cost to sporter a firearm back in the day? And did it actually make economic sense? Well, while I was doing research on a somewhat related topic, I came across an interesting graphic, one that breaks down the cost of sporting a firearm. I'm not sure what year this appeared in print, but I think around 1961, as the Argentinian M91 Mauser, that's the subject of this piece, cost US $19.95 that year according to ads that I've seen, and what the graphic has for its cost. I suspect that this appeared in Guns magazine sometime in the early 1960s, but I haven't been able to find which issue specifically. At any rate, that preamble over with, let's look at what it cost in 1961 to take that firearm and turning it into a hunting rifle. I'm not going to go exhaustively through the graphic because you can just pause the video and read it for yourself, but I will highlight a few things. As I said, the Argentinian M91 Mauser back then would run you $19.95. Pretty good deal with inflation. That's about $200 in today's money. What really interested me was materials and labor. To shorten and crown a barrel back then cost you a grand total of $3, about $29 today. A Weaver K3 scope, which was a 3-power duplex reticle scope, was $37.50, the priciest part of this build. New wood for the build was $32.50 and was probably pretty nice given it's twice the price of the rifle itself. Bishop isn't in business any longer from what I can tell, but based on my research, they were located in Warsaw, Missouri, and made custom gun stocks that ranged from standard to pretty fancy. The rest of it is relatively minor stuff like sights more suited for hunting, labor for the various bits and bobs that you were putting on it to turn it into a sporting rifle, like sights and base, custom safety, swivels and the like. Again, even with inflation factored in, these are prices that would make a modern gunny salivate. To save you the math, the entire cost for parts and labor was $143.65. In today's funny money, that's about $1,402, which is a hefty amount for a hunting rifle. With the price of the Mauser factored in, you're talking a total build cost of $163.60, or just shy of $1,600 in 2022. If you're not up on your military surplus prices, you might be wondering how much one of these Argentinian Mausers will run you today. Well, you might actually be surprised to find out you can still pick these up pretty cheap. In a quick tour of Gunbroker, which whatever you may think of that website, does at least give an indication of what people are at least willing to pay for something, even if the actual value is debatable, you can find them anywhere from $400 to $800. In fact, the most expensive asking price I found for one of them elsewhere on the web was not quite $2,000. That price is completely out of line, but I do present it as a data point. So what does this all tell us? Well, one, if you want an Argentinian M91 Mauser, or any South American Mauser for that matter, you better not sit on your hands. There are only a few military surplus rifles left on the market that haven't seen huge price jumps. Buy now or see people who don't understand supply and demand complain about forums in a few years about how these Mausers aren't worth what people are paying for them. Well, actually, Redneck Preppy, if that's your real name, they aren't worth anywhere near that. 2, there was a clear value in sporting a military rifle. If you page through the ads in 1960s magazines like Guns, you can find fairly cheap hunting firearms for sale. It also wasn't hard to find very nice rifles for close to $300, which today would translate into about $2,900. In that earlier Browning ad that you saw, one of the options was a basic rifle for $175, which would still come in at about $1,700 today. So in 1961, you could take a very well-built Argentinian M91 Mauser made by no less than companies like Ludwig Lohe or Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken Aktiengesellschaft, DWM for the rest of us, that was probably lightly used and turned it into a high-end hunting rifle for not quite half the price as an off-the-rack high-quality stock one, or just under what a bargain-level rifle would. And it was customized to your tastes. That said, the work done on the M91 that we went over today might be an extreme example. Most sported rifles were more modest. Barrel shortened, new sights, wood cut down, and Bob's your uncle. You could probably do a basic build for less than $40 in 1961, rifle included, even cheaper if you did some of the work yourself. At the end of the day, you still have a high-quality rifle for a lot less than the fancy rifles the money bags were buying 60 years ago. As much as I may abhor sporting a military surplus firearm, the math and the intention make sense to me. Let's not forget that these surplus markets were flooded with millions of rifles after World War I and World War II, and by other countries dumping their bolt-action rifles as the move to semi- and fully automatic rifles began in earnest. These rifles weren't historical objects back then. They were just cheap but well-made rifles dumped on the market in enormous volumes. That said, while I can forgive the decisions of 60 years ago, sporting a firearm today is just plain silly. Most military surplus firearms have risen sharply in price in recent years, past what a pretty decent hunting rifle would cost you. Instead of murdering a lovely Lee Enfield or even a Mosin Nagant M9130, both of which can run you $500-600 easy in today's market, go buy a Savage Access for less than that. Hell, some of those Savages even come with decent enough scopes. Anyway, I came across this graphic and I thought it might be interesting to share and perhaps put some context into the decisions that we roll our eyes at today. Hey, who knows, in 60 years people might think some of the things we did in the gun world are abhorrent. Of course, perhaps I'm being too nice. Try finding an unsported Canadian Ross rifle today. At any rate, I hope you found today's video to be vaguely entertaining and at least mildly informative. May you never be tempted to sporter one of your own military surplus rifles and enjoy it as it was intended. Take care and bye-bye.